They told you Cleopatra was nothing more than a beautiful seductress who used charm to control powerful men. But that version of history is one of the greatest lies ever written, because the truth is far more dangerous. Cleopatra was not remembered for her intelligence, because her enemies made sure she wouldn't be. She spoke multiple languages, negotiated with emperors, controlled the richest economy in the ancient world, and ruled one of the most powerful civilizations on Earth at a time when women were not supposed to rule at all. Almost everything we think we know about her comes from Roman writers who won the war, and then wrote the story, turning a political genius into a scandal and a queen into a warning. Hollywood repeated that lie for centuries, dressing it in romance and tragedy, while quietly erasing the real woman behind the crown. But what if Cleopatra was never mysterious, never manipulative, never weak? What if she was calculated, educated, and terrifyingly effective? To understand Cleopatra, we must strip away the propaganda, ignore the myths, and confront an uncomfortable truth. History does not always remember the most powerful people honestly. This is not the story of a seductress. This is the story of a ruler who scared Rome, challenged empires, and lost her legacy not on the battlefield but on the page. Cleopatra was born into power, but power did not guarantee survival. She belonged to the Ptolemaic dynasty, a Greek royal family ruling Egypt for nearly 300 years, a dynasty famous for internal betrayal, sibling marriages, and political murder. From childhood, Cleopatra learned one brutal lesson early: intelligence was the only shield. Unlike her predecessors, she did not rely solely on bloodline or tradition. She studied relentlessly philosophy, mathematics, astronomy, medicine, diplomacy, and most importantly, language. While other Ptolemies ruled Egypt through translators, Cleopatra learned to speak Egyptian fluently, along with Greek, Latin, Hebrew, Aramaic, and several African and Middle Eastern languages. This single decision changed everything. It allowed her to communicate directly with priests, generals, and common citizens, building loyalty where previous rulers failed. When her father died, Cleopatra inherited a throne already rotting with debt, corruption, and Roman interference. Within years, she was betrayed by her own brother and forced into exile. Most rulers would have disappeared at that point. Cleopatra returned with strategy. She gathered allies, raised funds, and prepared for a calculated comeback. She did not rush blindly into war. She waited, planned, and chose the perfect moment. This was not desperation. This was preparation. Cleopatra was not born powerful. She learned how power works. When Julius Caesar arrived in Egypt, Rome was already pulling the strings of the Mediterranean world, and Egypt was its most valuable prize. Egypt fed Rome. Its grain kept Roman citizens alive, and its wealth kept Roman politics running. Cleopatra understood this better than anyone. Her alliance with Caesar was not romance, it was negotiation. She offered stability, resources, and legitimacy in exchange for her throne. Caesar did not fall for beauty. He recognized intelligence. Cleopatra used political theater, symbolism, and calculated presence to present herself not as a client queen, but as a ruler Rome could not afford to ignore. Once restored to power, she immediately began repairing Egypt's economy, stabilizing currency, reopening trade routes, and eliminating famine. She ruled actively, issuing decrees, managing temples, and reinforcing Egypt's independence while publicly aligning with Rome. This balance was dangerous but effective. Cleopatra never challenged Rome openly. She outmaneuvered it quietly. Even Caesar's presence in Egypt benefited her image. She was no longer an isolated ruler, but a global power player. When she gave birth to Caesarion, she did not declare him emperor. She declared him pharaoh, reinforcing Egyptian identity over Roman dominance. Cleopatra was not trying to become Roman. She was protecting Egypt from becoming Roman. After Caesar's assassination, the world shifted overnight. Rome fractured, and Cleopatra faced a new reality: survival without her strongest ally. Mark Antony entered the story, not as a lover, but as a necessity. Antony needed money, ships, and stability in the East. Cleopatra needed protection from Roman enemies who viewed her as a threat. Their alliance was mutual, strategic, and transactional. Cleopatra financed Antony's campaigns, supplied fleets, and provided logistical support that Rome could not easily replace. In return, She regained territories that had been stripped from Egypt decades earlier. Together, they built a power base that rivaled Rome itself. This terrified Octavian. Roman propaganda immediately reframed the alliance into scandal painting. Cleopatra, as a corrupting foreign woman who controlled Antony through desire? The truth was simpler and more dangerous. Cleopatra was funding Rome's future wars. She was not behind Antony. She was beside him. Coins from the era show them ruling as equals. Cleopatra never abandoned Egypt for Rome. Antony repeatedly came to her. This detail alone destroys the myth. Powerful men were not conquering Cleopatra. Cleopatra was choosing alliances that served Egypt. Octavian understood something critical. Cleopatra could not be defeated by armies alone. She had to be destroyed symbolically. Rome unleashed one of the most effective propaganda campaigns in history. Cleopatra was portrayed as immoral, manipulative, exotic, and dangerous, not because she was any of these things, but because Rome needed its citizens to fear her. Gender played a central role. A powerful man was a hero. A powerful woman was a threat. Roman poets, historians, and politicians rewrote events deliberately. They erased Cleopatra's policies and magnified her relationships. They ignored her reforms and obsessed over her appearance. This version of Cleopatra survived because Rome survived. Egyptian records were destroyed, temples were repurposed, and her legacy was overwritten in Latin. History did not forget Cleopatra, it replaced her. This was not accidental bias. It was strategy. By turning Cleopatra into a seductress, Rome justified its conquest and erased the idea that a woman could rule effectively without Roman approval. Cleopatra's final chapter is often told as tragedy, but it is better understood as control. After defeat, she faced a future worse than death. Public humiliation in Rome, paraded as a trophy in Octavian's victory procession. Cleopatra refused. Her death, whether by poison, serpent, or carefully prepared method, was deliberate and symbolic. She denied Rome the spectacle it wanted. She denied Octavian his ultimate proof of dominance. Even in loss, she chose the ending. That choice is the final proof of who Cleopatra truly was. Not a victim, not a lover, a ruler who understood that legacy matters as much as power. Cleopatra lost the war. But Rome never fully conquered her story, because every time history is questioned, her intelligence resurfaces. The real mystery of Cleopatra is not who she was, but how successfully the world was taught to forget it. Cleopatra's story does not end with her death, because stories like hers never truly end. They echo through history, reshaped by those who benefit from controlling the narrative. When we strip away the Roman propaganda, the exaggerated scandals, and the Hollywood fantasies, what remains is not a mysterious seductress, but one of the most capable rulers of the ancient world. Cleopatra governed a complex economy, commanded loyalty across cultures, and navigated the most dangerous political landscape of her time with intelligence and precision. She was a scholar who ruled, a diplomat who calculated every move, and a leader who understood that power was not only held with armies, but with perception. Her greatest defeat was not military, it was historical. The world remembered her beauty because it was easier than remembering her brilliance. And in doing so, history delivered a warning to every powerful woman who followed. Rule too well, and your legacy may be rewritten by those you threaten. But Cleopatra's story forces us to confront a deeper question. Who decides what history remembers? The victors write the records, but time has a way of exposing cracks in the story. When we look closer, Cleopatra's intelligence resurfaces in coins, decrees, alliances, and decisions that could not have been made by a careless ruler. Her life reveals how easily truth can be buried under repetition, and how myths become facts simply because they are told often enough. Cleopatra was not an exception, she was a pattern. Her legacy stands at the crossroads of power, gender, and memory, reminding us that history is not neutral, it is negotiated. So the next time you hear Cleopatra's name, remember this. Rome did not defeat her mind, it feared it. They could conquer her kingdom, but they could not allow her example to survive. And that raises one final, unsettling thought: if Cleopatra's story could be twisted so completely, How many other leaders, innovators, and visionaries have been erased, reduced, or misrepresented in the same way? History may be written by the winners, but it is rewritten by those who question it. If this story changed the way you see Cleopatra, then stay curious, because this is only one truth history tried to hide. Share this documentary, join the conversation, and keep asking the uncomfortable questions, because the moment we stop questioning history is the moment we allow the lie to win. If this story changed the way you see Cleopatra, show your support by liking this video, sharing it with someone who loves history, and leaving a comment below. I want to know what surprised you the most about Cleopatra's true story.